I wanted to ask your reaction. I don't know if you saw Seymour Hersh's latest report on Nord Stream. He's claiming that the source that he's been in communication with has, and through his own research, all indicate that the Biden administration was planning on blowing up Nord Stream prior to the Ukraine conflict beginning, and that the reason for this was that the United States wanted to essentially force Germany off of Russian gas, Russian LNG, because there was concerns that Germany wouldn't comply with this pressure that the United States is placing on Germany and the entire so-called Eurozone over the course of the last several years, and especially since this conflict began. So I want to know your take, because right now the Eurozone is in projected negative growth territory. Germany's already in a recession. A lot of talks about deindustrialization and a long economic crisis for Germany in particular. And also you have Europe at the same time that this is happening, targeting China now and attempting to seemingly do the same thing that they did with Russia in its relationship to China. This $900 billion the EU has in terms of a trade relationship with China. They are now, with leadership like Emmanuel Macron, going after China and saying that they are going to, for national security purposes, start to clamp down on particular industries, electric vehicles, high technology, similar to the United States. What do you make of all this? It feels like, I mean, there's often this term, or this phrase, shooting yourself in the foot. This feels a lot worse than that. This feels like what happens when you self-emulate.
Look, I mean, there's two separate things. Well, let's start with the first part of your question, Seymour Hersh's article. I just spoke here tonight, so I think anybody can see that I agree with the conclusion that was drawn from the article, that Ukraine has lost the war. I mean, there's two hours. He did the one about Ukraine losing the war. Now I did the one about Nord Stream as well. I've known Seymour Hersh for 25 years. We're good friends. I respect his reporting. He's a man of great integrity, etc. And if he quotes a source, I'm sure he's vetted the source. The problem I have is he seems to be working off of a single source. There should be more, but whatever. His sources say things, but then they say things like, well, Putin's a thug, the Russian, the illegal Russian invasion. And I go on and I say, well, wait a minute, that's not reality. That's not, if you interview an intelligence analyst, they're going to give you a better answer than that. This is a politicized person. And if he's getting it wrong about the initiation of this conflict and what's going on, I have to reserve judgment on his conclusions as well. Even if I agree with the conclusion, I have to question how he got to that conclusion, because a broken clock is right twice a day, but the rest of the time it's wrong. And so again, I have to withhold judgment. I'm just saying that normally when Seymour Hersh writes something, I just jump right on board and I go, boom. But lately he's been quoting people who have a fundamental misunderstanding of the reality of Russia and Vladimir Putin. And I'm somebody who believes that you can't solve a problem unless you first, have defined the problem properly. And if you're starting off with the definition of the Ukraine problem by getting Russia wrong, what does that tell you about everything else you're getting wrong as well? And so I'm holding judgment. Again, let me just say that Seymour Hersh is a man of tremendous experience with a track record that's, it's unmatched. He has the highest integrity and the highest degree of standards, and he's probably vetted the hell out of this. And probably there's a reason why he can't quote additional sources, etc. But the fact that the source he quotes gets it fundamentally wrong about Russia is problematic to me. Now, when we get to the second part of your question, which was, because it is late and I'm getting tired, so my brain just did a quick erase. What was the second part after?
Well, it really is about the conclusions that the United States was pressuring Germany to get
Gotcha.
off
Oh yeah,
of Russian LNG, and now it seems like Europe is doing the same with China. But there's this problem that Europe is right now seemingly self-emulating, essentially and primarily because of its
Well,
behavior
what's
toward Russia.
interesting, I mean, you saw. Did you see that GOP ad that came out? That ridiculous GOP ad
No.
about. I mean, their math is hilarious. You know, we've spent 5% of our budget, and we've destroyed 50% of the Russian army in Ukraine. So this is a reason why. And I'm like, 5% of the budget. I thought the budget was around 800 billion, and we've admitted to spending 113 billion. I may be a Marine, and my math isn't my biggest thing, but 113 billion out of 800 is more than 5% of 800 billion. So your math's a little off. 50% of the Russian army. I mean, it's 900,000 troops at the start of the war. It's up to about 1.5 million right now. 50% would be between 450,000 and 750,000. Really? You've destroyed that many, right? I mean, the math is totally off. But what it got at is what we're doing in Ukraine is so important because it sends a message to China. And if I were the Chinese going, well, what message are you sending me again? That your military sucks, that your defense industry sucks, that sanctions hurt you more than they do the nation you target, that you're destroying yourselves, as you say, self-immolation, and Russia's come out stronger. I'll take some of that. Look at Germany. The Chinese premier, or remember, van der Leyen and then the German Schultz, and not Schultz, but the foreign minister went to China, and with their big trade delegations. And a key aspect of this is what they call de-risking. That's the new buzz phrase. It means delinking, but you're not allowed to say that because you don't want to scare the Chinese off, because the Chinese are stupid. I mean, we saw the Ukrainians say those Indians and Chinese, they have low intellectual capacity. So the Chinese are really stupid people. So they don't see through you when you say, we just want to de-risk. What does de-risking mean? Well, de-risking, it's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's not like we're delinking. No, the Chinese know exactly what's going on. Remember, they're the dominant economic power in the world for a reason, because they do this better than anybody else. So they're sitting there with the Germans, and the Germans are saying, well, we need to de-risk. And the Chinese are going, well, could you check your balance sheets for a second? We have, but we just want you to check them. How are you guys doing on the domestic side of your business? Oh, you're losing money everywhere. It's like red. A lot of red, right? A lot of red. So basically, if you de-linked from us, de-risked, we don't de-link, you'd just be losing money. You go out of business, right? So the only main money-making venture that you have is the joint relationship you have here. And you want to de-risk it? And the German guys go, oh, they go back to their boss, say, boss, we can't. The only money-making thing we got is our relationship with China. We don't need to de-risk. We don't need to minimize. We need to double down, because the only way we can revive our domestic economic fortunes is by making more money. And the only place we're making money is in China. That's the reality of it. And this is the stupidity of Europe. They are literally slitting their own throats, shooting themselves in the feet, pouring gas. Have you seen that movie? I think it was Zoolander. At the beginning. All right. So Derek Zoolander's out there with his beautiful models, and they're at the gas station, and they're spraying gasoline all around. And then one of them lights a cigarette and they all die. That's Europe right now. I'm looking at Europe, and I'm just going, oh, the beginning of Zoolander, because that's what they're doing. They're literally a bunch of, pretty little models running around there, spraying themselves with gasoline, and they're going to light a cigarette and kill everybody. Stupidity in the extreme. Europe is a joke right now. It's a tragic joke, because Germany used to be literally the economy upon which the European Union was built is the German economy. The conservative German banks set the standard for, monetary policy and things of that nature to make the euro a strong currency. Well, the German economy is in collapse. Deindustrialization is taking place at a pace that's unimaginable. The French aren't far behind. The British, likewise. The Italians are in trouble. There's not a single place in Europe that's doing well. Not a single place. And it comes down to the decisions made to, sanction Russia, which have backfired. to decouple from Russian energy. Dumb move. And it's going to get dumber. I think, I mean, I got to reemphasize this point. For all that Europe's done to Russia, you do know that Russia continues to sell energy to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why? Well, they make some money. But the main reason why is because the Russians actually honor their contracts. They're an energy provider. They don't walk away from their contracts. But the Russians are the most ethical businessmen in Europe today because they're living up to their contractual obligations while Europe is just pulling out everything, stealing money, doing everything wrong. If Russia treated Europe the way Europe treats Russia, Europe would be already 6 feet underground. They'd be done. That's not what the Russians are doing. The Chinese are also likewise very patient people. I mean, the Chinese are like having a very good babysitter dealing with, the most ill-behaved children. A giant kindergarten class full of ill-behaved children. And the Chinese are like trying to, okay, time to take a nap, everybody. Time to eat. We're going to organize everybody. Get you guys cleaned up. Billy, stop fighting over there. The Chinese are when I say Billy, stop fighting, who the hell made peace in the Middle East? Well, it wasn't America. It wasn't Europe. It was the Chinese, of all people, came in and said, Iran, Saudi Arabia, sit down, make good. This is like a really good daycare center, running of all the little children, making them all work together. The Chinese, are they perfect? No, nobody's perfect. But the Chinese have a successful model that the West hasn't been able to mirror. Europe can't. Again, it's just an amazing how it was the come to Jesus moment for German auto industries, where they were saying, decouple, delink, and we can't. If we stop selling cars in China, we don't make any money. We have to go out of business. And already German industries are fleeing Germany because they can't afford the energy prices. And the German government just came down with a news flash last week. They won't be able to subsidize energy costs for the population this winter. So the entire country is going bankrupt. I pray for the European people that we have another mild winter, because if there's a cold winter, they're in a lot of trouble. It's literally, I just had an interesting conversation with a Russian of Armenian descent about what's going on in Azerbaijan and with Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I don't think everybody realizes that we're like this close to having a major regional war, not between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but between Iran and Turkey over something called the Zangezur Corridor. It connects as a southern corridor, a stretch of land that I think it's the name of the province area, but it connects Nakhchivan, which is Azerbaijani territory that is linked with Turkey, with the rest of Azerbaijan. It's Armenian, it's part of southern Armenia. And the Turks and the Armenians want to basically take over that land and link up there, because now the Turks will be able to have a sort of a new Silk Road connecting Turkey through Azerbaijan into Central Asia and have that connectivity. Meanwhile, the Russians had signed a deal with the Iranians for a northern corridor coming down from Russia, working its way down through the southern Caucasus, through Armenia, through the Zangezur corridor into Iran and down the Chabahar, which gives you a port into the Indian Ocean. And a lot of money has been put into that. And so the Iranians have said, if you guys shut down the Zangezur corridor, we're going to war. And the Turks and the Azeris are going, well, we're going to shut it down. So the Iranians are moving troops up there. Things are happening. The only nation that can stop this is China. Why? Because both corridors China benefits from. I mean, China's already been building up the Chinese-Pakistani economic corridor that comes down and it goes to the port of Gwadar. I might be saying that wrong, but again, another port on the Indian Ocean. They've been building that up. Gwadar is supposed to have connectivity with Chabahar. If it gets that connectivity, the Russians can dumb down Chabahar to Gwadar, go in, and now you have this wonderful connectivity taking place. Chinese would also like to be able to tap into going into Turkey and up into Greece and into the rest. So the Chinese are looking at that going, this war would suck because it basically cuts off both corridors. So the Chinese it's not America the world's turning to anymore to say, hey, could you resolve this issue? Could Americans come in, be the adults in the room? It's the Chinese. So is there a lot to criticize China about? I'm sure, Danny, you and I could spend all day digging through the books and go, aha, oh, gotcha. But the point is, that would be like a sentence here, a paragraph there in a 1,000,000-page book. But the 1,000,000-page book is like the Chinese are kicking some serious ass. I mean, they're doing it right. It's not perfect, but they're doing it right. And I'll leave it this last one. It's just one of the greatest ironies since you brought up China. Biden at the G20 signed off on something called the India-Mideast Economic
Right.
Corridor.
I was going to bring up your article about this because I saw that you published yours. I'll pull it up and I'm going to put it in the chat because I wanted to ask you about, because this all has a lot to do with Europe too. The Belt and Road Forum is coming up next month. And this corridor has been touted as the alternative to Chinese influence, which what they really mean is China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
But there's some interesting complexities here I've gone over in this program, but your article does a really good job in going over in depth these complexities. So I'll kick it back to you, though.
No, I just want to point out that, the idea is that it starts in Mumbai, in that area, and then you're supposed to get connectivity to the Middle East. So from Mumbai, you'll go in and you'll hook up in probably Dubai. And those are both developed ports. But now to get from Dubai into Europe, you have to go by train. Now, what people don't realize is that for the last couple decades, there have been rail lines built throughout Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. There's been some talk about building a one that connects all of the Gulf Coast, the GCC nations, but they can't cooperate. So it's falling apart. But the United Arab Emirates has a nice train system. Saudi Arabia has a nice train system. And this corridor talks about building on these train systems as a counter to the Belts and Roads Initiative, except that these rail lines are all built by the Chinese as part of the Belts and Roads Initiative. So in order to make this corridor work, they have to piggyback on the Chinese Belts and Roads. And you know who's going to upgrade the trains? Because they're saying, well, these trains have to be upgraded and all this. Chinese companies will. They got the contracts. So Joe Biden is going to take billions of American dollars to pour it into the development of this thing. And who's he going to be paying? The Chinese to build the rail lines that he needs. The Chinese are going, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Now, here's the beauty of it. It goes through Saudi Arabia, up into Jordan, then across into Israel. Whole another level of complexity, whether or not this is ever really going to happen. But the port that they're going to come out in is Haifa. Haifa is going to be the gateway to Europe. Well, gosh, that sounds good, except, wait a minute, Haifa. Why is it such a big port? Oh, yeah, that $1.7 billion port construction and modernization done by the Chinese as part of the Belts and Roads Initiative. That's okay. Forget about that. Because now they're going to load up all these cargo containers onto ships in this nice Chinese-built port, and they're going to sail to Greece, to the port of, and I'm going to Piraeus or something like that. But it just so happens that that port, Greece's largest port, is that way because the Chinese built it as part of the Belts and Roads Initiative. So this whole concept of a corridor to counter the Chinese Belts and Roads Initiative is nothing more than Joe Biden piggybacking on the Belts and Roads Initiative. How stupid can you be? And the answer is about as stupid as Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like the Belt and Road Initiative has basically laid the roots of this corridor. And if we know anything about, and you mentioned this in the article, the G7's big promise back during its last summit, not much happens. And I know Pepe Escobar has done a lot of work about how there's a lot of these projects that generally get announced, and the United States in particular doesn't usually put, and especially in the collective West, they don't really put much into this. Now I think they're trying to, Saudi Arabia and India, they're trying to massage them and try to maybe have them shoulder some of the burden, but it does feel pretty, you use the word complex. I guess we could also say suspect. We're a lot of question marks as to what actually will happen, what can happen, and The Belt and Road Forum is next month. We don't have a date yet. Putin will be there. 110 countries will have representatives there, probably more by the time it happens. It just it feels like the game is lost. Yeah.
And again, going to this India-Middle East Economic Corridor, what people need to understand is it's just a memorandum of understanding. It's nothing. Nothing. There's nothing there. Literally, it's a bunch of nations getting together going, wow, what sounds cool? Why don't we build a port? Why don't we go from Mumbai to Dubai? That sounds pretty cool. So that would be India to the Middle East. Wow. Then what? Well, why don't we build a train that connects the Middle East to Europe through Israel? That sounds really cool. Why don't we do that? Let's write it up. How do we do this? We don't know. Is there any basic fundamental agreement on this? No. All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll say that nobody's politically committed to this, but we have 60 days to get together to work out the details. Well, sounds good, guys. Let me tell you this. The details will never be worked out. This will never happen. It won't get off the starting blocks because, first of all, it requires Saudi Arabia and Israel to make good. And there's the whole issue of Palestine there that's problematic. Also, Saudi Arabia just made good with Iran. And Saudi Arabia is just joining BRICS. And Saudi Arabia is leaning towards the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Iran has joined both. The future of Saudi Arabia, money-wise, is all in that direction. They're going to throw it all away to make good with Israel because Joe Biden wants them to make good with Israel. And remember, it's Joe Biden that said, I will never shake the hands of Mohammed bin Salman because of his, the murder of Khashoggi. But he went crawling there 2 summers ago to beg for lower oil prices. And the Saudis said, no, we're not going to do that. And they continue to say, no, they weren't going to do that. There's a lot of pie in the sky going on right now. If I didn't know better, I think that, Joe fell in on Hunter's cash and got a little high when he came up with this because there's nothing realistic about this, nothing at all. To begin with, to pay China to build infrastructure that's designed to counter the Chinese infrastructure development program. It makes no sense. So I would bet money, if I were in Vegas, I'd find an odds maker and I would bet money that this India-Middle East Economic Corridor never happens, never gets off the ground.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.